The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Hope you are all having an amazing day today. That's right, because it is Monday, January 22nd, and today is National Polka Dot Day, Rico. It's also National Sanctity of Human Life Day. I probably murdered that word. It's a celebration of life and national... Oh, man, this is the best, Rico. Get ready for this. It is also National Blondie Brownie Day. Oh, yes. Thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look down below on your screen to see where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube and also on Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and oh yeah, that's right, and our very own website as well. But kicking it off today, that's right, we have the dope dad himself, the Quasimodo caretaker, Mr. Rico Lamitte, who has been out on the streets, and we were up in Modesto over the weekend for the brand launch of Profit, which there was a extreme success, and shout out to everyone over there at Fino's. It's an amazing store, and you should definitely check out Fino's if you're up there in the 209 for sure. But nonetheless, that's right, it is none other than the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte.
Oh yeah, Jason, appreciate the warm intro. And huge shout out to Luke, Manndie, the whole squad up there in Modesto. We had a beautiful time, had a gracious host, and everybody was just absolutely outstanding, man. Just outstanding weekend all together. So, what's up with the video, man? You got me, half Yarrow.
Just hold on, bro. It's adjusting, bro. It's a transition. You got to let him transition.
Of course, you'd be doing that, giving Yarrow 51% when I have a story all about social equity.
That's why we did that.
Let's go ahead and hop into it, right? So I'm gonna try to be as quick as possible because the story's long. I cut a lot out, but I highly recommend everybody check out high9news.com for the full rundown of what's going on. All right, so. Yet another state social equity program is being called out as nothing more than a distraction to the people and a cash grab for large chain dispensaries and MSOs. This episode, we're talking about Arizona. Back in 2020, Arizona voters created the social equity license program by approving the state's adult use cannabis law, defining the program as aiming to promote the ownership and operation of marijuana establishments and marijuana testing facilities by individuals from communities disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of previous marijuana laws. It's a story we've heard and seen time and time again, and unfortunately, the result of said aspirations have gotten quite predictable. Per the article, Arizona advocates and social justice activists warned at the time the program would only add to the tally of dispensaries owned by wealthy corporations. And that's just what happened. The social equity licenses come with more zoning headaches because they only allow for recreational sales. But they were still highly sought after as some of the last licenses available since the state has a cap on the recreational or medical licenses per 10 pharmacies. Arizona has 169 issued licenses, with only a few still not in use. Some hopeful social equity applicants, often people of color, claim that they were victims of predatory financial schemes. Uh, Aggrieved parties have sought help from the courts or the state Department of Health Services, which oversees cannabis regulation in Arizona. But the state agency, which set the rules for this program, only can play a limited role in how it works, DHS Acting Director Jennifer Cunico said in a September 2023 newsletter. So what's the point of even having an oversight agency in the first damn place when they don't have the power to report or act on what they've seen? More government spending, more taxes going to nothing. The agency's authority does not extend to resolving businesses or business disputes among or between licensees, she wrote in the letter to Tucson Democratic Representative Alma Hernandez, who had inquired about the problems within the program. Nor are we responsible for investigating fraudulent or exploitative business practices. It says a lot about your governing body right there. All right, so programs had been predicted to fail. Arizona is hardly alone in failing to create a successful social equity cannabis program. Of the 15 state social equity programs, not one has resulted in an equitable cannabis industry across all four pillars of equity: industry, justice, community, and access, according to a 2022 report by the Minority Cannabis Business Association. MCBA says that the reasons for failures include lack of funding for startups, unwillingness to apply race-based criteria in programs, and caps on the number of licenses. Arizona's social equity program was a way for ballot measures authors to address the historic imbalance of marijuana arrests among racial minorities. Statistics, including those collected by state health agencies, show Black, Latino, and Indigenous people in Arizona are being arrested for marijuana-related offenses at higher rates still per capita than white people. Numerous media reports also have highlighted complaints that dispensary owners are disproportionately white men. Members of this dispensary industry wrote Arizona's law, but left details of the social equity program to the state health agency. With suggestions from community members, the agency drew up rules that required licensed applicants or their family members to have an expungable marijuana offense in their past, have an income of below 400% of the federal poverty line, live in an area disproportionately affected by marijuana enforcement, take a marijuana business training class, and pay $4,000 to enter their application in a lottery. Qualifying applicant had to own at least 51% in any group or corporation that applied, though the rules put no limit on selling a license once it was obtained. Remember that. We never had a chance, said Celeste Rodriguez, one of the principals at Acre 41. Of the 26 people who won the license lottery, she said most sold their licenses or control of future business operations for much less than their value. At least 4 received as little as $35,000 for their licenses. $35,000, y'all. Rodriguez is working with aggrieved current or former license holders, has reached out to lawmakers, and plans to contact Governor Katie Hobbs to try to fix the nightmare of a program, hoping that she can revoke some of the licenses, and is lobbying for a new law that takes marijuana oversight away from the state health agency. Steve White, the retired co-founder of Harvest Cannabis Stores, we've talked about him many times on the store, sunk $1.8 million of his own money into marijuana legalization proposition campaign. He said that he discussed the issue at length with the measure's other authors, but found there was no model where social equity worked well. He acknowledged their plan included letting the DHS make the rules for the program, adding he had hoped that the agency would give applicants more time to find resources of capital for their businesses. The list of social equity license operators includes big names in the industry such as Story Cannabis, Nirvana, Jars, Copperstone Farms, Soul Flower, and Mint Dispensary, but not Harvest or True Leaf, which acquired Harvest in 2021. We chose not to put resources into that, White said. As the largest contributor to the initiative, he said that it would have been really hard to explain becoming a beneficiary of social equity program. Google that story. You'll find the real facts of what happened between Steve and Harvest, but we're not going to go into that right now. But White doesn't blame the other companies for taking over their partner licenses, saying that they just did what the rules allowed. As for original license holders, they did better than they could have done without the program, he said, even if the main vision of the program was never achieved. Mint dispensary owner owned several dispensaries in Metro Phoenix before acquiring rights to 4 social equity licenses. My PR firm would probably not want me to tell you much, said Raul Molina, Mint's chief operating officer. How would he even say that shit? The system is not how it should have been. For some original applicants, the program did not plan out as well for them as they could have because of who they dealt with, he said. I've heard some horror stories. Those who negotiated with Mint walked away content. He can't say much about the deals because of a non-disclosure agreements, but they involved life-changing amounts of money, is what he said. In one case, a social equity license winner made a deal with Cookies, a multi-state cannabis operator. The winner didn't have the resources to open a business himself, and he and Cookies ultimately sold the license to Mint for $7.5 million, he said. For a guy who says that his PR firm or his PR rep are not telling him to say much, he is saying a lot here. Just got to say that. Another case involved license holder who formed a company called Woodstock One and entered a management agreement with Mint for the next several years. Mint will be paying them a large amount. Whether we do well or not, they are making a lot of money. They are happy to still have the license. Laura Avila, listed on the Corporation Commission records as one of 3 principals of Woodstock One, said that she's happy with Mint deal, but declined to answer any other questions. There's a lot to this story, and a few more well-documented and detailed retailer points of view in this article. So please check out this one. It's a doozy. Definitely worth the read at high9news.com. From a personal standpoint, I really don't know what else to say at this point. Back in 2016, 2017, I marched for the original idea behind social equity, helped organize and produce expungement clinics here in Los Angeles with Virgil Grant and several other groups. Went door knocking, educating citizens about cannabis opportunities up in Oakland, Supernova Women, Hood Incubator, and James Anthony. Shout out to my people up north. Corporate takeover was never part of this vision. It's the exact opposite of what social equity was initially meant to represent. 7 or 8 years later, what we're seeing from a state-to-state purview here is the same story being played out. And it's hard to believe that in the grand scheme of things, that social equity, at least in the ways that we've seen it structured and implemented, will ever provide the once promised sustainable viability for Black and brown operators. The clock's ticking towards federal legalization, rescheduling, and or interstate commerce, each of which are sure to provide even more challenges to what social equity means and how equity operators maneuver in an economic environment riddled with landmines. Even the richest of companies are struggling to navigate. So I don't know what else, or if there is another solution to suggest to this point, other than reparations as retribution for the same communities wronged by the war on drugs. If I said I was surprised we are where we are now, I'd be lying, so I won't. But instead, I'd like to ask the rest of my team here, what do you guys think is the future of social equity? Is there a future at all, and what does that look like? I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News, opening this one up.
I think the future of social equity looks like what you said. How much did they get? $36,000 for their license? Or 36, yeah, 35
At least
grand.
4 of them received 35 grand buyout by these corporations.
That sounds like the future of social equity to me.
I mean, there's 1,000 layers here. I do have one question though. Probably the last quarter of what you were talking about, you referenced a social equity license that Cookies tried to sell.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I was just confused about that. How did Cookies acquire that social equity license?
Like
does it say?
There's a lot of digging.
I mean, there's a social equity applicant that qualifies, and then he partnered up with Cookies and whatnot.
Sure.
Okay, and
so they partnered up with Cookies to create some kind of benefit.
A social equity store.
And then that, for whatever reason, wasn't working, and so cookies.
Who knows? Who knows? You can't say it may not have worked. They could have had the offer to, hey, I'll tell you what, if I get offered $7.5 million for my store, like, I'm taking the $7.5 million.
Yeah, Manndie, there's nothing that indicates that they're not allowed to sell their license in this article, and so cookies could acquire it. Different social equity programs have different dilution restrictions, exit
in Arizona,
protocols.
Once the license was active, they're allowed to sell it immediately.
So I got a little riff, ramble, and rant for y'all on this
here
one.
we go.
Come on with it, Yarrow. Come on.
Yeah,
brother.
so look, I'm verified social equity in multiple markets: San Francisco, Sonoma County.
You look very social equity.
I've been working on social equity issues and policy going back to 16, 17. First was introduced to it with the Oakland program, and then when I saw the San Francisco program, I started laughing and crying at the same time, because I grew up in the wrong neighborhoods, I went to the wrong schools, and I got in the right trouble. And I've watched these iterations of policy, and it's been really challenging. I have a social equity distribution permit in San Francisco in my own name. I'm the only owner. I'm the only person on the cap table. And it's done nothing for me because the incubator company hasn't completed their raise and their build out. And so I've got nothing. I've got years of work and nothing, because if they don't complete their build out, I don't get to be incubated. I go nowhere, and I can't move that license. And San Francisco is the birthplace of well-intended legislation that goes off the rails. And so one of the things that we had in San Francisco was this restriction to dilution and selling our licenses for 5 years, which is super ageist and super anti-capital and didn't make any sense. Like, why do I gotta own my business for 5 years? And so I think part of the problem is that in the social equity conversation around cannabis, we've tethered the expectation that intergenerational wealth can be created. And if I hear anybody else use that term again, I'm going to take a used gym stock and stick it in their mouth, right?
Intergenerational wealth.
And so hold on. I'm not done with this rant. And so the thing is that we were sold a better outcome than represents the average for what businesses achieve in this country. And then with that, people chased a bigger dream, and everybody tried to hit a home run instead of just to get a second base hit and get on base. And so, it's challenging for me because I partnered with one of the biggest luminaries in social equity. They even won like a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Emerald Cup last year. And this person played me left and right. And what I realized is, well, I want to change the world and we need policies that help do that. People just need to tell the truth and be good and fair dealing in their business practices instead of just being shady, right? And so in respect to these programs, restrictions on dilution have made it harder for capital. Restrictions on sales have been a gold-plated chain around our necks. And so I like to say selling out is the new keeping it real. If you can get a net positive, get a net positive. Some people might get 350,000. Some people might get 3.5 million. Some people might get 35 grand. But what I got is 6 or 7 years of nothing. And so I just, on the one hand, I see what people are saying in terms of like, well, we're giving scraps to these constituents. And on the other hand, like, a net positive is a net positive. The other thing I would say is that you quoted the policy organization that said that there's a failing in having these policies be written for Black and brown individuals and communities. And that is absolutely not accurate in my opinion, because the reason why we came up with these disproportionately impacted areas is because of what happened with the history of affirmative action policy in this country and the way a lot of those policies got shot down because they were race-based. And so we needed to come up with criteria that were based on the impacts, not the individual, not the immutable characteristics of those people, but the things that happened to them. And I've been saying for a long time, and this is not to take away from Black and brown communities, but Indigenous communities often get overlooked, and there is a different look often for urban social equity versus agrarian social equity. And the helicopter flew over Covelo just like the helicopter flew over Compton. And so I think that it's my takeaway is always that a broken social equity program can often be better than no social equity program. But, and this is the final part of my riff, but these things have a greater chance of actually being effective if they're baked into the beginning of these policies instead of these retroactive bolt-ons that often don't do a lot. The challenge that I have right now is New York, where people were sold on a set of circumstances and guidelines. And it's like Charlie Brown, where that kid is holding the football and the other kid goes to kick it. And then they just push the football away and the kid just slips and falls. And so I still think that there's hope for social equity programs. I don't think it takes away from all the damage and FUBAR that is in these programs. But I don't think that social equity programs will ever be a substitute for policy around reparations, Rico. I think that that's a much broader conversation that deals with some systemic issues that these programs will never be able to address. And in the meantime, if they're putting resources behind it,
real quick,
I'd rather have it.
Real quick to that, because it was always promoted not just as generational wealth, but also as the closest thing. There's just several people who said this. Closest thing to reparations is we're going to get in America today. This is a form of reparations. This is not reparations, ever. And that's my point. I'm never saying that this is reparations. I'm saying
you're never allowing reparations
money. If you actually want some kind of sustainable wealth, you need to get in form of reparations, because this ain't it.
This ain't it.
People licenses.
All they're basically doing is setting people up for failure with all of this social equity, because you're giving
that's all
people
they did. It's a
enormous debt, enormous tax liability, enormous debt. Like it's not a winning combination for these people.
It's not a viable path to sustainable wealth at all. It's a fucking lie.
They should have just gave them all lottery tickets.
Might as well gave them some scratch off games. You would have a lot less heartache.
Go ahead, Manndie.
In some cities, they essentially did. There was classes and required programs that they had to participate in, and some of them took up to a year with requirements of different like classes and things that had to be completed just for the opportunity to get in the drawing or to be considered for a license. So there was a lot of prerequisites just to become a qualified applicant, and you still walked away with nothing. Exactly. And at the end of the day, there's no guarantees in business, right? There is no guarantees. It doesn't matter what you've been through, how much money you have. I've seen people start businesses with nothing and become millionaires. I've seen billionaires become completely broke and so I mean there is no guarantees. This is the game of life, right? We're all jumping in. We're all playing it to the best of our capabilities. So
that's right.
I think the one thing that's really
what's that?
Which is once again, we are building an industry that has never been done before. There is no rule book. There is no playbook. There is a semi-half-assed guess book that we're all just playing by. And it's all going to change. It's all going to continue to unfold. Nothing is set in stone. Do not put your stake in the ground and claim that this is how it will forever be, because that's the first step to losing. Just stay agile. Don't make really permanent decisions as much as you can, because you always have to be able to pivot as fast as you can. And I don't care if you're social equity or not, because it's just business rules.
I know we're way over time. We're going to pivot to Jason's story, but I would like to say just envision this. All four of us right now have been involved with social equity businesses in some form or fashion over the past 7 to 8 years. One of us is black, and the one of us that's black has never touched a plant.
I don't get the point.
That's social equity.
What do you attribute that to?
That's social equity in a nutshell.
Oh man!
I've been
what do you attribute?
Of course, you're trying to go there, Rico. Stop the ridiculousness on that. We're gonna go to a commercial. We're gonna be right back.
Is that not social equity in a nutshell?
Yeah, you're cute. You're cute. You're cute, Rico.
Y'all put in more work, and y'all struggling just the same as black people with the licenses. Is what I'm saying. This shit ain't going nowhere, man.
It's not.
Oh man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
He's known for smoking the best weed in the world, and on Friday, he took his show all the way up north to Modesto,
Yes.
where he showed all of the local constituents there that, yes, indeed, Jason Beck really does exist. Come to the stage. Y'all know who he is.
Yes,
Jason
that's true.
Beck.
That is true. That is true. I was in the 209.
I'm still struggling
Yes.
with that shit, man.
Yes. Oh,
And-
man. But
And Jason Beck even found really good weed in the 209.
I did because I brought it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
You found it at the Prophet.
The Prophet did have good weed. Not even gonna front. Their weed was good. Not even gonna front. They
Prophesize
did
about that shit.
they did
Drive up.
have some good weed, and I smoked some of it. So at that point in time, for those few seconds, that was also part of the best weed in the world. But nonetheless, you guys, can I tell you who's not having a good day today? That's right. You guys guessed it. It's MedMen. Because MedMen shares have reached a zero value, you guys. That's right. Former high-flying cannabis company MedMen Enterprises, MMNFF, continues to circle the drain as the company's stock price falls to zero. Green Market Report had previously written that the OTC had pushed MedMen stock down to a lower level where stock prices aren't publicly quoted. However, some light trading continues in the stock. Some shareholders on the Reddit board Weed Stock said that they attempted to sell shares and the trades did not go through. The Yahoo Finance trading activity showed that there was a volume of 24,139 shares with the high price of, that's right, you guys guessed it, 1 penny. The last trade of the company's shares on the Canadian Stock Exchange occurred on January 4th of 2024 with a high price of 2 Canadian cents. That's like 1 US penny, you guys. MedMen just recently managed to sell its Arizona assets to Mint and said it would get $14 million. That money could help the company get up to date on its filings, which have resulted in punishment from both trading exchanges. And MedMen also said that it has sold some of its Nevada assets, but that deal hadn't received regulatory approval yet. And the company announced in December that it was selling MMOF Vegas Retail Incorporated and MMOF Vegas Retail Number 2 Incorporated to a company called Retail Facilities Operations NV LLC. Let's see, managed by Evayan Sahara, and the looks to generate another $10 million. And Sahara is the co-founder and CEO of Brightroot, which is the parent company of Mint Cannabis. Potential owners, you ask? Well, however, it is a drop in a huge bucket of liabilities for the company, and the company has a deficit of over $400 million and has been paying some account payables and liabilities with essentially worthless stock. Companies that have invested in the company are likely to battle over the scraps that remain after the assets have been sold off, and companies like Tilray have invested in MedMen back in 2021, and Tilray issued 9,817,061 shares valued at $117,804 to acquire 68% interest in Superhero Acquisition LP, which purchased a senior secured convertible note issued by MedMen. Also, you also have Gotham Green has been a longtime partner of MedMen and has sunk millions into the company over the years, and the company is owed $1.3 million a quarter in interest payments, which it has been receiving in shares, meaning each quarter it owns a larger chunk of the equity in addition to the debt. MedMen may be restructured from the dead, or may be resurrected from the dead, but there may be not much left to save, they say. Well, what do you guys have to say about this? MedMen shares trading at a penny. They've hit the bottom of the barrel, and this is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do y'all have to say about this?
So we go buy stock now. right?
Go buy.
No, there's a difference between buying the dip and being a dork.
Yeah, that's like straight being a dip.
We can all save MedMen together now.
Oh man. I mean, I'll tell you what. I'd buy some MedMen shares if they're priced at 0 pennies.
What is saying?
Don't we have one of those little buttons for the soundtrack where it does one of those clown whistles like wah 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 wah?
It's actually a trombone, Yarrow. It's a trombone.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a trombone.
Yeah. Wind instruments were never my thing, but but I like the way Manndie gets that like the air trombone. So shout out to Green Market Report and Deborah over there for all she does, keeping us current. To me, this isn't news because we've known this was going to be.
This was inevitable, right?
Yeah, this has been the most likely outcome for going on 5+ years, and so it's really just been watching that happen in slow motion.
Very, very, very true. Very true. It's been a downhill thing for MedMen ever since they got that unicorn $1 billion valuation. It seems like they've just been on a steep decline ever since.
I mean, it's hard to be the first big dog. I mean, and they really were. They really came out strong years ago. They paved a lot of road for a lot of people. It's hard to be first. It's the most expensive to be first. You make the most mistakes when you're first. And when you come out as big and strong as they did from the get-go, unfortunately, our industry is really good at being haters. So.
Yeah, but I think there's more than that. It's the hubris, right? Like, personally, I've been up, I've been down, and I realized over time that life is like chutes and ladders. And when you make big paper, you start to believe your own ego, your own, the voices in your head that say you're better than. And so I think looking back on this story, looking back on this founder journey, when they were up, I didn't see a level of humility that reflects maturity. And I think it's important to remember we all get our 15 minutes of fame, but it doesn't mean we're going to stay the bee's knees. And these founders did certain things with the money that was indicative of irresponsible use of funds across a lot of scenarios. And so that may not be the reason why they fail, but it certainly is something that when we look back on what are the takeaways, one of the takeaways is treat all money like it matters. And even if you're the top dog, know that every dog is a dog, and don't get too caught up in your own story.
I mean, absolutely. But also, look historically what happened from like 2017 on. There's been billions of dollars blown just haphazardly in this industry. It's one of the reasons why the legacy operators who do still exist today are still in existence. Maybe they didn't get a hold of that funding. Ooh, look at my hand now. That's kind of cool. But they really didn't get the same financial backing. They had to keep, just scrapping it together and bootstrapping and doing what they were doing and plugging forward and just following instinctually what felt right, what has always felt right. And meanwhile, billions of dollars being dumped into this industry that nothing is here to show for it anymore. I don't know. This year is the return to legacy. I'm calling it.
Oh,
everybody,
2024.
All these investors who put money in, that lost their asses, that are looking at all of us who are still standing, that have been doing this shit forever. Like our industry, not to like make a comparison to like, they say cockroaches last forever, but they're just instinctually durable, and so are we. We are instinctually durable as an industry. Not
legacy. You're saying the legacy operators are cockroaches, is what you're telling me. Legacy operators are as resilient as cockroaches, is what you're telling me. Man,
we're gonna make it, is what I'm trying to say.
It's a good thing the DCC doesn't carry around RAID. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, look, Manndie, if I'm going to go with your really interesting Monday morning analogy, the survivors are cockroaches. It's okay. The survivors are cockroaches, and the where are they nows are dung beetles.
Oh, God. Yeah, you know what?
The point is, we're needed. We do have the answers. We are the answer to this problem.
Oh man, you sound like some of those globalists. Like you guys are gonna just be eating bugs in 2024. But nonetheless, we are gonna roll right on in to Mr. Yarrow Kubrin. That's right, he does real estate he every once in a while does cannabis. And even fewer than that, he is allowed to do cannabis and real estate all together at the same damn time. That's right, is none other than Mr. Yarrow Kubrin.
So I appreciate that you got my lanes correct, but it's not once in a while. It's all day, every day. East Coast, West Coast, and international time. And I am a formidable force behind the scenes. So that being said, my article today is Does Weed Make You a Nicer Person? Results Can Vary. This is by Hannah Loeb. Some people may turn to weed for anxiety, sleep, and creativity. New research suggests it could also make you a nicer person. The findings published in the Journal of Neuroscience Research suggest there could be a connection between cannabis use and empathy. A study of 85 regular cannabis users and 51 non-users asked participants to complete a test that measures empathy. Researchers also used brain imaging to study some of the subjects, analyzing a region of the brain that plays a central role in mediating the empathetic response. Cannabis users scored higher on that part of the test that assessed emotional comprehension or the ability to understand another's emotional state. In the imaging section of the study, cannabis users had greater connectivity in areas associated with emotional and empathy-related regions. Victor Mafahi, an author of the paper and a neuroscience at the University Nacional Anatomía de Mexico, said he was motivated to explore the link between cannabis and empathetic ability because of the sparse research on THC, the principal psychoactive constituent of cannabis. He believed that cannabis users could demonstrate higher empathy because of the suggested anxiety-mediating effects of cannabis. Quote, if you're not so anxious, your physiological response and anatomic response is not so high, he said. You can use your resources. While there's limited research on cannabis and empathy, a study published in 2022 on cannabis and pro-social behavior also suggests potential positive effects of cannabis. In the study, 146 college students who had varying amounts of THC in their urine filled out a questionnaire that gauged measures of pro-social behavior, empathy, and morality. People who use cannabis tend to have enhanced sense of care for other people and be motivated to engage in the world in a way that is benign and selfless, said Jacob Virgil, professor of psychology at the University of New Mexico and one of the study's co-authors. Since completing the research, Virgil started a retail cannabis company. Yeah, Virgil, you go, dog. Results of empathy techniques can vary depending on how it's studied. A 2016 report used a technique called event-related potential that assesses participants' response to a series of stimuli. The researchers found that empathetic processing was impaired in cannabis users compared to non-users. They can focus in on the emotions but can't empathize, explained Lucy Troop, one of the study's authors and a neuroscience scientist at the University of West Scotland. The mixed results suggest that it may be that individual and situational differences play a large role in how you react to cannabis. It may make someone easier, nicer, happier in one context, but it might do a different thing to another person, Troop said. We're not all the same. The recent research shows an association between cannabis use and empathy, but doesn't prove cause and effect, said Carrie Cutler, a psychology professor at Washington State University. We have no idea if that's the people who are more empathetic to begin with are more likely to use cannabis, Cutler said, or there may be another reason such as like a personality trait or difference in lived experience that is driving people to be interested in using cannabis and have higher empathy as well, said Cutler. There's not enough evidence to convince me yet that the cannabis is causing them to be more empathetic. This is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News, Monday morning, January 22nd. I'd like to hear, Manndie and Jason, what you two think.
Sounds like I'm going to have to stop smoking weed because it sounds like it's making me too soft.
Oh my God. I feel like you're not smoking enough still. Keep trying. Okay, first of all, yes, 1000%. Cannabis provides so many different unexpected outcomes for people. And I really believe that cannabis is one of the most highly effective ways for you to disconnect from the hype in the world, all the noise in the world, and to really kind of like sit down and, you know, reflect on life, reflect on what's going on, and also deepen your relationships. I mean, one of the things that I often say about using cannabis in my parenting is that it helps me have a better understanding with my kids, more empathy for what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Even in those moments where I feel the hustle and bustle as a parent who's always wanting to do the next thing for work, it has always allowed me the moment to pause and sit down and enjoy my kid being a kid for a little bit. And so I think that cannabis naturally allows individuals to kind of just slow down and stop and smell the flowers, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some piggyback comments, and I appreciate what Manndie just said. The first is the study, the sample size, the number of people who were respondents in this. I don't know that that's statistically significant. We're only talking about under 400 people. The second is, I think those of us who are in this industry, it's hard not to separate ourselves from seeking confirmation bias. So do I like this headline? Do I like this article? Absolutely. Do I think it moves the needle because it's just so much scientific research? Not at all. But I think that however humanity reaches a more compassionate and empathetic place, whether you do it through smoked Gouda or smoked ganja, either way, we know that this is a world that could use a lot more love, a lot more caring for our fellow humans, and a lot more being in our heart and not in our head. And so if cannabis helps some people to get there quicker or to stay there longer, I ain't mad at it.
Oh, I'll tell you what, you know who probably doesn't like this study is probably the prohibitionists, because it goes against all of their narratives that cannabis consumers are like the worst people. They all don't care about anything that other than like eating Cheetos and whatnot. And so I think this goes against the whole prohibitionist narrative, and I think it's good overall for the industry. But it
validates the societal benefit of every reggae and Grateful Dead concert that's ever been held.
Exactly. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
Oh, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you hit that like button. I know you'll appreciate it. We'll appreciate it, and even YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com.
I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get yourself a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
That's right, baby. I'm Smoky Vanilla with my background in kinesiology. I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on athletes who have chronic pain or injury due to their sport, or the legends of the chronic in the game, baby.
Oh, yeah, you know what it is. We just stretched, and now we're gonna smoke, because you know what it is.
That's right. I love intuitively creating a session based on the individual I'm working with. We'll go through a few assessments, look at the past health history, injury, or anything that's still affecting you today, and create a customized session just for you. Let's go. Woo!
Oh, yeah. Coming up next, she's a mom, a cannabis executive, and she was out there in Modesto with us with the launch of the Profit Brands. But even more importantly, she is also the creator and founder of the Women's Canna Awards, which is going to be held in just a little over 60 days. So make sure you get your tickets now and get your entries in if you're a woman-owned brand. That's right. It's none other than Miss Manndie Tingler.
Thank you. Good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. I am coming off of a very huge grand opening weekend. Our brand Profit dropped in Modesto, as Jason and Rico have both lovingly mentioned. Thank you guys so much for coming up, showing up for us. It was wonderful to have you there. And, I don't know if you guys know this, but we ended up selling out of a couple of our...
I knew that. I knew that. You know why? Because I tried the product
there was over
beforehand.
600 different attendees that came through the dispensary during that window of time. And a significant portion of those folks were between the ages of 21 and 25. And that is one of the reasons what led me to this interesting article that High Times has shared with us today. Headline reads, Proposal in Washington seeks to raise legal cannabis age to 25. But are they interpreting science correctly? You guys be the judge. In 1996, California was the first state to legalize medical marijuana. Following this, 40 states, along with the District of Columbia, have legalized the medical application of cannabis. Additionally, the District of Columbia and 24 states have allowed cannabis recreational or adult use, although 4 have yet to launch their commercial retail markets. In all of these instances, as with alcohol, the age allowed to use is 21. But in Washington, there's a bill that specifically proposes raising the minimum legal age of sale for cannabis products with more than 35% THC concentration to up to 25 years. There would be an exemption for qualified patients and designated medical providers. House Bill 2023, addressing, quote, high THC cannabis products, was introduced in Washington State House Committee on the Regulated Substances and Gaming by Representative Lauren Davis, a Democrat of Shoreline, and Tom Dent, Republican of Moses Lake, on January 11th, with a public hearing on January 16th. They argue that high THC cannabis products presents both physical and mental risks that need to be addressed. They say, today there's no legal limit on the potency of psychoactive element THC in cannabis concentrates. Cannabis vape oils, dabs, and shatter are regularly sold with a THC potency of nearly 100%, which they claim is a 10-fold increase in potency from when cannabis was legalized in 2012. They say that these concentrated products are different and, quote, dangerous. The cannabis industry has changed considerably since cannabis was legalized, Dent said. The legislation is needed to address the ever-changing market and put some measures in place to protect cannabis users and, of course, our youth. At Cannabis Business Times, they report that back in November of 2012 in Washington, along with Colorado, became the inaugural states to legalize cannabis for adult use. Starting in 2014, both states initiated sales of adult use cannabis for individuals 21 and over. Since then, the additional 18 states have adopted similar legislation. But if the bill passes, that age will raise to 25. Numerous advocates for legalization in the U.S. argue that age limit for cannabis sales should align with that of alcohol sales. However, legislators in various state governments holding more conservative views have advocated for raising the cannabis age limit to 25 years. They justify this by citing that human brain development continues up to that age. While the brain ceases growing by size in your early teens, it doesn't complete its development and maturation until the late 20s. The prefrontal cortex, which is located behind the forehead, is among the last regions to fully mature. It plays a key role in abilities such as planning, prioritizing, decision-making. There's some evidence that cannabis can alter the teenage brain and that one should wait until adulthood to enjoy these substances. The bill's sponsor argued that reasoning is backed by the work of scientists from Washington State University and the University of Washington based on a November 2020 report called Cannabis Concentration and Health Risks. The paper stated that, quote, use of cannabis with high THC concentrates increases the chances of developing cannabis use disorder or addiction to cannabis, particularly among adolescents. It also says that daily cannabis use, particularly of high-potency products, increases the risk of developing a psychiatric disorder like schizophrenia and is related to earlier onset symptoms compared to people who do not use cannabis. While such language is included in the bill, that David and Dent kept out the part that such evidence is talking about the effects of THC on those between the ages of 14 and 19, not 20 and 25, which is the age of adults that would be affected by this bill if it passed. The bill would also require Washington Department of Health to create voluntary training programs for retail cannabis staff on potential health and safety effects, and requires the University of Washington's Addictions, Drug, and Alcohol Institute to put into effect guidelines for healthcare providers and patients that were, quote, deemed at risk of severe complications for cannabis use. Well, you guys, another day, another crazy idea, continuing some marijuana mania. I can't wait to hear what my fellow correspondents think about this one. Let's go ahead and kick it right back over to you guys. Tell me what you think. This is Carmen Sacramento for High at Night.
Now, this worries me a bit just because of the fact that they don't have any type of medical basis to make the type of claims that they did for their reasoning in this, and not to mention it's a bipartisan bill, and it's coming out of Washington State, which is one of the first states to have adult use programs in place and had a very robust medical system prior. And so that's why this concerns me, is because a bunch of these other states are going to take this seriously and try to replicate this in other states, and that's why this big piece of legislation concerns me, because they don't have any basis. And these, especially these Republicans, they need to be more about freedom. And if you're trying to age restrict someone based off of that, you're not about freedom. You're all about control. And so they just need to let people, if you can go to fight in war, you can let people take whatever substances they want, and that's just the bottom line to it.
You know, and that you brought up a really good point, Jason. I mean, why is it that our country is okay with putting a semi-automatic gun in somebody's hands when they're 18 years old and shipping them around the world, but we have to be really careful about whether or not they try this plant that's never killed anybody before?
Yeah, and just so you know, I don't.
And also, let's not forget the big drinking culture that's within our military and law enforcement systems.
Mm-hmm. And I have no problem with our government putting firearms in 18-year-olds and sending them off to war. I don't have any problem with that. What I have a problem with is them restricting people's choices of what they want to do when we live in a free country. That's my problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a conscientious objector that doesn't think we've had a just war in the United States since World War II, and has watched our country insert itself militarily, either actively, covertly, or through the providing of arms in pretty much most theaters of operation in global conflict, I think that we're tethering this conversation to this interesting concept that we discussed last week on this show around this notion that 18-year-olds are allowed to bleed for this country and therefore they should have other freedoms. I think that while that continues to be the law of the land, I don't know that if we take a step back from it, is actually really good. Like, yes, we have to have a standing army. Yes, this is a world where violence is probably never going to be eliminated, and young men dying because of the country's policies has not always served our greater interests. I'm really conflicted, and so I'm really glad that you brought this article today, because it's one of these ones where I don't just have a ready-made, snappy response ready for reels, because I'm a parent and I'm also pro-cannabis. And I think the science is interesting. We now know that people's brains don't fully develop until 25. And because of that, I've changed my position in respects to the granular perspective I have about the Second Amendment. And I don't think young men should have access to assault weapons with a 30-round mag until they're over 25, because the brain is still forming. The challenge that I have with this law is the notion that changing the age of access is going to change the behavior of young adults, men and women, because my perspective is that they're probably going to access cannabis anyway, and that this is another gift back to the trap. Mm-hmm. And so I, in theory, love the idea that policy is updating to accommodate scientific information, but I think 18 to 25-year-olds are going to use cannabis whether they can get it in a store or not. And my greatest concern for this generation is not cannabis, it's fentanyl.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, on Yarrow, you made really good points, because I agree with you. If they would have said that they were changing the age limit based off of those reasons, those medical reasons, as far as the brain development portion, I could accept that, and it could be more palatable to me. But because they want to use this reefer madness, there's too strong THC and this and it gets people schizophrenia and this and that. All they're doing is using the reasons of nothing but reefer madness, and that's why I'm this dead in the water. Use some real science if you're gonna come across with these types of policies.
35% THC, like that's just such an arbitrary number that, I mean, no vapes, no more concentrates. Like
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and all it does is just like your point, Rico. It just feeds the trap because people are going to want those products regardless if they can purchase them in a store or not.
So I'm not Rico. I'm Yarrow motherfucking Kubrin.
I'm sorry,
And Manndie,
Yarrow.
when
My
they
bad.
ship these young men and women across the world, they don't give them semi-automatic weapons. They give them automatic weapons. That said, you two are incredibly insightful and add to this conversation, both on your perspective as a parent, as an advocate, and both as operators. And I think you're right, Jason. They didn't tether it to the science. And we have to be careful in this industry to not let this reefer madness 2.0 and 3.0 creep into the way in which policy is modified. And it's really unfortunate because when they put these THC limits, what they're basically saying, unless they have a different guideline for their medical, is that patients who actually need really high THC limits are going to have an access to that type of medication. And so I'm not so worried about the kid that wants a 92% hot dog water vape cartridge. I'm worried about the person that needs very high THC to reduce the symptoms they're having from chemotherapy. You know, there's this, I'm going to keep going back to it. I'm going to keep going back to the patient who needs high THC or access to medicine for chemotherapy, whether I'm railing about Wisconsin or we're talking about Washington. Either way, the only way you get a W and not an L in cannabis is if we still remember that there is this medicinal, this homeostasis, this wellness component. And who are we, with our lack of full understanding of the endocannabinoid system, to say that there's this arbitrary limit? And I think you really hit the nail on the head with that one, Jason.
You know what, too, Yarrow? I even respect it more if they said, hey, you know what? We're going to treat cannabis like rental cars. And therefore, you can only purchase cannabis if you're 25, since you can only rent a car once you're 25 anyway. So, like that to me would make more sense than what they're saying now. But, you know, on that, we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
The hurts of hash.
Exactly. Get ready for the 20-year anniversary celebration of the Emerald Cup. The Emerald Cup will be held at the Henry J. Kaiser Center for the Arts in downtown Oakland, May 4th and 5th. Get your tickets now for best pricing. Cannabis categories include flower, pre-rolls, solventless concentrates, solvent concentrates, cartridges, edibles, topicals, tinctures, and alternative cannabinoids. So enter early for your chance to be a winner at the 20-year anniversary Emerald Cup competition. Oh man, you guys, I got two more quick stories to power through real quick, and in the essence of time, I'm gonna power through this one. But this one kind of touches on your previous story, Manndie. Get ready, you guys. Older drivers show evidence of impaired driving performance after smoking cannabis, even if they regularly use cannabis. In a recent study published at JAMA Network Open, a group of researchers investigated the association between cannabis, simulated driving, and current blood THC levels in older adults. Epidemiological research indicates that cannabis increases vehicular accident risks through behaviors like weaving and slower reaction times. At least they got the last part right, with most studies focusing on younger individuals. The impact on older adults, a group with rising cannabis use, is less understood and may be more pronounced due to age-related cognitive and metabolic changes and medication interactions. Older long-term users might also show tolerance effects. The role of Delta-9 THC is key as it affects driving ability, yet the exact relationship between THC levels and driving performance remains unclear despite varying legal THC limits for drivers. Further research is needed due to the limited generalizability of the current findings of most participants, while most were white males, and to investigate the effects of cannabis on driving in older adults using more sensitive proxies and larger, more diverse samples. The present study was conducted in Toronto, Canada. Oh man, well, it wasn't good weed those guys had to smoke. I feel so bad for them. From November 22nd, adhering to the strengthening and reporting of observational studies in epidemiology strobe guidelines for cohort studies. Participants ages ranged from 65 to 79 were recruited via public transit and social media ads, and after giving written consent and meeting inclusion criteria, they engaged in a practice session which included a driving simulator test, and the session also gathered demographic information including race and ethnicity. The study followed a within participants counterbalance design exploring the relationship between cannabis use, simulated driving, and blood THC levels. Participants underwent 2 sessions, each lasting approximately 7 hours with a minimum of 72-hour interval in between, and they were instructed to abstain from alcohol, cannabis, and other recreational drugs for 12 hours before each session. And this thing goes on and on and on, but in the essence of time, we're gonna wrap this up. I want to hear what you all have to say about this. And to me, I think this is just more reefer madness, and I can't believe that the prohibitionists are trying to attack our senior citizens and their ability to drive. But what do you guys have to say? No thoughts? Guys, crickets?
I mean, I was just gonna let my cohort go first.
Ladies first. Okay.
I actually need to run.
Okay. All right, Mandy. We will see you tomorrow.
So Mandy, hard stop. Heartfelt goodbye. Congratulations on the profit launch this last Friday, and we can't wait to see you back again.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
I'll share a little bit about what I think about this, Jason. Look, older drivers, I've never heard somebody say that past a certain age that people's driving improves. There's a lot of activities where...
Me too. I've never heard that either, Yarrow.
What's that?
I've never heard that either. Exactly.
So there's a lot of activities where older people start to have a diminished capacity. And so I think there is potentially a lane, all pun intended, for a reasonable argument that what may not have been an issue earlier in humans becomes an issue later in humans as they reach this diminished capacity stage. Now, for every human, that may be different based on their physiology, their genetics, their underlying health problems. But do I want an 89-year-old grandma staring through the middle of a steering wheel as she rides her Cadillac Escalade with a big fat blunt and some rosin hanging off the side of her lip? Probably not. Probably not. But again, I don't see this through the prohibitionist lens. I see this through the lens of 8 or 9 years into this conversation with a lot of funding to some third-party academic institutions. We have still not been able to come up with a standard between ingestation and impairment, between when somebody uses cannabis and when that use of cannabis is unsafe. And so if we could start to develop some scientific-based standards, we wouldn't be playing whack-a-mole with what it's like for people who have used cannabis to still be safe on the road.
I just think that this is attacking seniors because we didn't have these problems prior to any legalized cannabis. They were all totally mute issues, and I just feel like they're attacking seniors. And let our seniors be. That's all.
Seniors are allowed to be attacked because the two biases that society still continues to accept is fatism and ageism. So you're just lucky they're not attacking fat seniors.
I mean, maybe they are. Maybe there was fat seniors that didn't mention their weights. You know what I mean? It mentioned everything else about them except for their weights. So maybe we should include that into the next one. But nonetheless, Yarrow, we're going to roll right into the last story. Are you ready for this, Yarrow? In the essence of the Super Bowl coming up and the NFC and AFC championships, I found this story and I thought that this was very timely. Pleasant Trees Cannabis Company smack talks Tampa Bay with a billboard for the Detroit Lions. That's right. However, the playoff game at Ford Field shakes out on Sunday between the Detroit Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. One business is making sure Metro Detroit knows Michigan already has Florida beat with marijuana, at least. That's right. Pleasant Trees Cannabis Dispensary of Mount Clemens is creating buzz this playoff season with billboards it's placing along Interstate 75 for Lions fans that talk a little marijuana smack this weekend. That's right. Tampa Bay smokes hemp. Let's go Detroit, the billboard says. The insult takes aim at the fact while Florida allows medical for marijuana purposes, Michigan lets anyone who is at least 21 years of age use it for any reason, and the billboards unify the Michigan cannabis community and industry around the Lions in a cheeky type of way that pokes fun at the common terms in the industry, said Brian Wilkerson, president of Pleasant Trees. In quotes, he also says, everybody's raging with Lions fever right now, just across the board. Wilkerson said it just seemed natural and fitting to try to find a way to support the home team. Wilkerson and Pleasant Trees team first thought the idea of the billboards, which are located on the I-75 south in Hamrick and I-75 north in Lincoln Park, ahead of the Lions playoff game against the Los Angeles Rams on January 14th. And these billboards said, Los Angeles smokes mids, let's go Detroit, and an insult aimed at California's mid-grade cannabis as opposed to high grade. Oh man, this article goes on, and they're just poking all kinds of fun at this. And shout out to Detroit. Congratulations on you guys. But we'll see if you guys are able to beat the Niners this weekend. But nonetheless, I'm going to digress. No chance, right?
Stop that.
Yeah.
Stop. I mean, come on. Let's
yeah.
We're a news show. Let's keep it factual.
Yeah.
You guys might as well just start writing your little "I'm so sorry, I just got stomped" letters. I've been watching these billboards and what they've been doing, and they have done a really great job of keeping it spicy and zesty, rooting for the home team, and getting their 15 minutes of fame. They have a series of revolving or rotating or evolving billboards where they've talked about how, Michigan has better cannabis than California, which is, and I've seen people on LinkedIn who actually drank the Kool-Aid and were trying to support that position instead of understanding the inherent clickbait nature of this advertising campaign. I think it's a great advertising campaign. Yeah. I think the number one thing about advertising is that you got to be memorable. You've got to sort of cut through all of the chatter and the signals and get into people's brains for a second and have them think about what you're saying. I think they're doing a fantastic job. Do I think Michigan has better cannabis than California? Stop. Let's just stop. You don't even justify with a response.
There's only one time that I can think of that Michigan has better cannabis than California.
Yeah, when Californians smuggle it out there and share their weed with other people.
Close, Yarrow. It's when I'm out there with my own weed.
Well, we will not be publishing your travel schedule to keep you safe and your sphere secure. But I think that these billboards do a really good job of poking fun and also normalizing cannabis, right? When they say, oh, you guys are smoking hemp down in Florida, they're poking fun at Floridians. Yep. They're poking fun with football. They're poking fun with Florida's policies. And I think it's just great. They're
poking fun at all the custies, bro. All the custies. Everyone knows Florida is the Custyville.
I love the billboards, not because of what they say, but because of the fact that they're just saying it and keeping it spicy.
Yes, I'm with you on that, Yarrow. I love these billboards. And shout out to Detroit and was it Pleasant?
Trees.
Pleasant Trees. Shout out Pleasant Trees for having some creativeness going on. We definitely appreciate it. But nonetheless, we got to wrap this show up. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to you tuning in every Monday through Friday for High at 9 News. We appreciate you all. Yarrow, you want to take him out with something, Yarrow?
you know, this is a pretty amazing program in so much as Jason has curated a really wide cross spectrum of people within the industry. And to my knowledge, it's the only daily news show that covers the 24-hour news cycle with both information and levity in a really, really cool infotainment format. And so what I would just say to our viewers is we are back tomorrow morning. So get your daily fill, and we'll see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. at High at 9 News.
Yes, and tell a friend, share the episode with
And
the people.
weed for the people.
There we go, Yarrow.